This is the Arizona Strip. It's mostly a flat desert strip of land in the northwest corner of the state of Arizona. It lies between the Colorado River and the Utah state line. Most of the land is flat desert type land. There have been men coming to the country and buy a little range who feel that they want to be a cowboy. It takes someone with a lot of, should we call it guts? When I was a boy, most of our horses were range raised. Didn't have any particular special breeding that we know today. Many of our saddle horses were these old wild Mustangs that were so plentiful on the range that some of them were the best horses I've ever ridden, and some of them you just never could break them. They always remembered their old wild ways, and they never could overcome it. Most of the ranchers are breeding quarter horses, which are naturally adapted to work with cattle. They're tough, they're sure-footed, and they're alert, and they take to working cattle real well. It takes several years to make a real good cow horse. A lot of experience, a lot of training, a lot of patience, and a lot of know-how in handling a horse to make a good cow horse out of him. Now, some horses are better qualified to naturally adapted to be a roping horse than others, and you might find another horse that's adapted to be a cutting horse. And we watch for these natural characteristics in the horse and train him for this particular thing that he's best adapted to do. We save our best horses for corral work, such as roping when we're branding and cutting cattle, when we're selling and so forth.
When you go out on the roundup, you look for a variety of things. You check your range very closely for what it's cost you over the winter to run your cattle there if you're gathering up in the spring. Then you have to watch very close that you don't drive a cow away from a calf. You may see a cow off here somewhere, and you've got to be absolutely certain that you don't bring that cow away without her calf if you're bringing them up to brand and to move off the range to a summer range. So any cowboy can tell if a cow is being sucked. And if she's got a fresh bag and it shows that she's got a calf somewhere, why, she might fool you around for half a day and won't go to it. But you just have to wait until she does get it or just find it, and that's very hard to do. And another thing a cow will do, they'll leave a cow to babysit. There might be 4 or 5 cows with their calves way off here several miles from the water. But they'll leave one cow there with this bunch of calves, and the rest will go into water and then feed back. And that night this cow just stayed will go into water. And it's amazing to a lot of people. This cow might leave this calf down there 5 miles, and she'll come in and get her drink and feed back, but she'll go right straight back to that calf. And she knows exactly where she left it.
It used to be that we'd round up our cattle around a water hole like this, and we'd have enough cowboys that we'd just hold the cattle right here, and we'd put a couple of fellows, the best ropers in the herd, to rope the calves and drag them out to the branding fire. But now we've gone a little more modern. We'll drive our cattle down to a kraal to do the branding, because we just don't have that much help, and it makes a lot easier job of it to put them in the kraal. I remember when I was a boy and I first began to ride this range, there were no fences. It was hard for the old-time cowmen to think that they could run cattle any other way than on the open range. However, came a time when there was so much competition for grass and forage and water between the cattle and the sheep and the wild horses that the government decided they were going to have to take a stand on this thing and do something about abusing the range the way some of it was being abused at that time. So the Taylor Bill came into effect, and the range was divided into individual allotments. The man had to fence his allotment and keep his cattle right there, and in that particular area, many of the cattlemen felt that they were going completely out of business. This just wouldn't work. And now they just couldn't understand how it would be possible to hold their cattle right in one particular area. But there were good things about this. Of course, we didn't like the fences, but as we were forced to go this way, we found that there were many advantages, because a man then could run the kind of cattle he wanted. He could work them the way he wanted to work them, and without competition from someone else. And however, it's a little hard for some of us to have to accept the fact that there are fellows in the working out of the BLM offices that have a college education without practical experience, and it's hard for us to accept them trying to tell us how we can run our cattle. We who have been raised on this range, spent our lifetime here, feel that we have our ideas that are hard to change, and we feel that we have got along real well. This is the big complaint that we have. But most everyone now is pretty well satisfied with things as they are, and take it as a whole, I can see that there's quite an improvement in forage conditions and range conditions. Many of us don't run as many cattle as we used to, but we run a better quality cattle, and we're raising heavier calves. We're actually selling more pounds of beef than we were when we had more cattle, and they weren't good of quality, and they didn't get as heavy as they do now.
Well, what's happened, the older men have about all died off since the Taylor Act has come in, or gone out of business. Now, I went out of business a year ago because I had no boys to follow in my tracks. Most of the people that are in the cow business now are boys that inherited from their parents, and they inherited again from their grandparents. And back to the front end of it, around in this end of the country, a good share of the cattle was started from the Mormon herd of cattle. It was raised here to pipe and here on the desert. Properly run, these younger people could have a lot better cow life than they're going to have the way it's being run. So these young people have to go have a job on the side, and they punch cows Saturday and Sunday, and they work too fast, and then they got to get back to their job on Monday. And they either ought to have enough cattle to give them a full-time job, or they shouldn't have any cattle. But then the grazing service comes along, and I have a winter range set up for 132 cows. They cut me down to 53. But you can't run 53 cows because that's not a living. So I just sold out to another man that had a little bigger unit than I did. I didn't have any kids that wanted mine, so I sold out to a man that made his operation enough bigger so he could afford to stay in business.
Back in 1935, there were at least 30 homesteaders right in this area. All of them are gone now but me. And, they'd sold out, some of the larger ranchers around here, and they didn't all leave at once, just kind of dwindled over a period of about 15 years. And I think there were a few left yet about 10 years ago. And the folks came in here in January of 1924. And we've been here ever since. At the time that we came in here, there's quite a bit more rainfall in this area. And this range grass that's about 2 inches high now was about 18 inches high in those years. And the main reason for the conditions of this area today is more drought than overstocking, I would say. And this is not a normal year by a long shot. One of the main reasons why a lot of those homesteaders had to leave here, they didn't get even culinary water on their ground. The drilling facilities back there were mostly homemade, and even though there was a commercial rig in here at the time, a lot of them couldn't afford to hire him, even at $3 a foot. The way they powered them was just muscle. They'd tie a stick in this rope and jerk it by hand. And your biceps were the walking beam of the well rig. So there are some wells in this valley over here to the north that guys drilled in the rock up to 90 feet down and got water. Those wells are still producing. This well right here is 32 feet to the water strata. It's a weak flow. It's running water, all right, paper thin in river gravel on top of shale. Yeah, when we first came here, we tried farming and various crops, corn, milo maize, and other field crops, and then they didn't do too well because of the way the rainfall was, and we found out later on that small grains such as wheat and rye would do better here. And a few years later, it just kept getting a little bit drier, and moisture wasn't dependable, so we finally just went to livestock exclusively. And that seems to be the best crop and the native grass here that you can grow here without irrigation. Now, with irrigation, you can grow anything that this growing season in this area is long enough for. But without irrigation, no. Some years, yes, but you can't depend on that. The wheat that they planted here did real well for a few years, and then as it got drier, the winds would blow away the topsoil. And this happened about 2 or 3 times in a row, and I think that was the factor why they quit.
There's lots of erosion in this country. It's filled up with thistle. And a cow can be going along the edge of this wash, and maybe that calf will just walk off in them thistle and can't get out. And if a cowboy don't watch that, he'll lose a calf there. And of course, all this erosion, it would be expensive. Of course, it costs a lot to erode it because we fed the vegetation all off in the range. But if we would get the vegetation back and dam off these washes, Then we raise our water table, and we'll have twice the feed that there is on the same area now. And if we're going to have some young people raising beef for us to eat, we got to encourage them by having some feed to run on. It's the cook's duty to do all the cooking for no matter how many men you got, and to move your outfit. The range boss or the ride boss will say, now we're going to have dinner over the pipe. So as soon as he can gather up all his stuff from breakfast, well, then he hitches up and in his funky. And sometimes they have 2 wagons, sometimes only 1. Throw all the beds on and close their chuckwagon box and put their cooking tools in the wagon, and they'll go on over the pipe. They might be there 2-3 hours before the cowboys get in, but they'll have all this time to get a good dinner ready for them. One thing that makes a difference is you would never see a package of Bisquick in an old-time cow outfit. Then for this many people, you'd have at least 2 big bread ovens. Have a full trench clear along under that line and a tripod hanging over it. To have different sets of pots, and have coals for your Dutch ovens. He's going to put that Dutch oven there now and put a lot of coal underneath and a lot on top. And with this breeze blowing, if you don't put some sand up around the bottom so it don't blow under it, he'll burn them on the bottom. But maybe he knows that. I suppose he does. But there'd be a real big deeper oven. Of course, he's got a roast in. We never used to cook meat in a roast in an oven. We'd roast it by running a rod through it and hold it by the coals and just spin it around, let it slowly cook from the coals. And you'd use a big oven just for frying meat. Of course, it didn't take much to fry that meat because we wouldn't eat anything with second yearling heifers. It was good and fat. Meat was tender, juicy, nice to cook. But this is quite an authentic old cupboard they've got here, this mess wagon. That's pretty good for these times. Carried dry beans, mainly them little white navy beans. And then we carried all kinds of dried fruit and rice with the raisins. We used lots of rice with the raisins. You'd never have this lumber to make your coals out of because it just doesn't make too good a coal, or it doesn't last long enough. Oaks or pinon, pine make the best coals. But that's pretty authentic the way he's working there. But this is all that canned vegetables and what have you, that's pretty modern. We started using canned goods, maybe 25 years ago. But the other thing was, you see, most of this range, this desert range could be used pretty well with a wagon. But all the mountain range had to be used with pack outfits. When you use a pack outfit, you're very limited as to what you can take. And most of our ranges was pack outfit ranges. In fact, a lot of the desert was. We never had pies and cakes. We just had sorghum. We used to call it lick. That's sorghum made out of cane, you know. And then honey, we'd have lots of honey. And just dip our old biscuits in the beef grease and put sorghum on it or honey. It made a pretty good dessert.
The old roundup cook used to keep his pot rack right directly behind the wagon there. And the area between the fire and the wagon was his territory, and the cowboys were supposed to stay we're not supposed to get on that side of the fire while he was cooking. I've seen several times when the old cook would threaten to wrap that pot hook around an old boy's neck because he got in his way there. It's quite a temptation sometimes. It was real hard for some of us boys to stay on our side of the fire, especially on a cold evening when a little of that heat felt mighty good.
He set up so the smoke blowed away from him and the table.
Yes, sure.
So the cowboys had the smoke beside the fire to stand by. They stood by it.
Yeah, this was something the cook was real particular about.
You bet.
Get out and check the wind to see which way that wind was blowing before he set up.
We had an old boy cooking first one fall out here, old P.T. Coleman, and he was just a shade western, that old chap was. And this Gilbert Heaton, this boy that's been here all day, he got on a gray horse that was a little bad to buck one morning, just about time it come daylight. And he was off quite a little ways, but that old horse broke in two with him when he stepped up on him, went right through camp. That old P.T. Coleman got his shovel, and he just whipped that horse over the head and everywhere else. When he didn't hit the horse, he hit Gilbert. Until he got him away from that fire, I'll tell you, it is a pretty western scene.
You ready? Well, this morning we're going to brand the cows we have in the corral. And this is the really hard job about the livestock business. Wrestling these wiry calves is rough, and it's hard work. But we'll go into the herd. We generally will assign one man to do the roping, and we like a man that's careful and quiet in the herd so that he doesn't get the cattle stirred up. We have a few cattle with a different brand than the majority of the cattle have on them, and we try to get them with their mother so that we're sure that we get the right calf for the right cow. This is not too much of a problem with us because most of the cattle are with the one brand. But we heat our irons in the fire. We'll drag the calves up and we tie them. We generally tie 3 legs so that they will lay there. And then we'll brand most of these calves will be branded on the left ribs. We put a brand we call the 7X on the ribs. And this is an identifying brand. Any animal with that brand on shows that that's our animal. And this is really a trademark or a mark of ownership. This brand is recorded with the state of Arizona, which is according to state law. That any person running range livestock on the range must have a brand recorded with the state, for the reason that if there is ever an argument over ownership, you can go back to this recording and prove ownership. And then we earmark the calves. We cut a certain mark in the ears of the calf, and this is a means of identification. When you're riding on the range and you see an animal with this earmark, well, that belongs to so-and-so. That belongs to us, if it's our earmark. And this sometimes, now, in the spring of the year like we are here, some of these cattle have long hair, rough hair, and it's hard to read a brand. So the first thing you look for is an earmark. And then another thing we will do is vaccinate the calves for blackleg and also for shipping fever and pneumonia, which takes care of any shock of handling the calves at this time. And then we will dehorn the calves for the reason that if you get a bunch of cattle together, and if they have horns, they're always hooking each other and bruising each other, and it's really a severe thing. And in a week, these cattle pretty well have forgotten all of this branding and dehorning that we're doing to them, and they'll go right on growing again. One thing that we do that some wonder if necessary, that's we castrate all of our bull calves, make steers out of them. This is quite a severe operation. If your calves get up 5 or 6 months old or older, it's hard on them. I let old Mac get on the horse and do some roping because he was just going to work himself to death here trying to wrestle these calves. That's a young man's job.
He acts like a young man.
Yeah, he does. He's a good roper.
That's the way, boy. Just drag him in close to the fire.
What's that?
Just drag him in close to the fire. That's the way.
All right, I'll take him up a little shorter and bring him right up there.
Okay. You got any ready to turn loose?
No, they all got to be dehorned or earmarked.
You better wait a little bit, Owen. We got a lot of them here.
Yeah,
huh?
we're about to catch up.
Yeah. Don't want to work these boys too hard.
Go ahead, please.
How did you stood when you was
Same old way. You just drag them up. Just drag them up.
used to tie him, or did they hold him?
No, just hold him. One man on, two men to him. Just leg him down.
On the hind.
Yeah. Generally had two branders and somebody earmarking and castrating all the time.
We've done that a few times, but lots of times we were kind of short-handed, so we just got in the habit of doing this.
It's easier.
All right, so.
Yeah, it's easier to tie him down.
Yeah. You got plenty of help to hold them. It's real good.
We don't have any more pigging string.
Gonna have to sit here.
There's a lot of pleasure in being your own boss and running a bunch of cattle, and I can see these young men. I don't blame them. I'd stay in just as long as I could if I was young. No matter how bad it was to run, I'd still stay in the cow business if I possibly could. Well, I thought I wanted to be a wild cowboy and learn how to rope and to ride. I thought I wanted to kill wild Indians and hang their scalps by my side. I thought I wanted to eat my meat raw and carry my pistols by twos. I never once thought I'd get homesick and down to them chuckwagon blues. But now I want to go home to my daddy, and I long to see my old ma. I want to tell my big sister that I ain't going to be no outlaw. I want to trade these high-heel boots off for a pair of old Brogan shoes, because I'm willing to walk if I have to, because I'm just down to them chuckwagon blues.